Okay, next up, I'm pleased to introduce Trish Hyde. Trish, along with our colleagues here at the table, have come all the way from down under. So another Aussie, and she's actually the CEO of the Australian Packaging Covenant, which she'll tell you a little bit more about. But this is a big international trip for her to come out and come from the Big Island and come and meet some other people in this industry. So please join me in welcoming Trish Hyde.
Thank you. It is an absolute honour to be here and to be getting the opportunity to talk more around circular economies. That's one of our driving passions. I actually, though, we are finding some challenges in Australia. We talk circular economy, we've heard about it being a theoretical, at the theoretical level, but there are problems in actually implementing, and we do struggle in Australia to implement. And I believe it's because we talk circular, but it's actually what we're talking about is flat. It's not whole yet. We haven't got all of the answers. We do need to get them, and we can, but there are big challenges that need to be addressed. A little bit about the APC, because we are a very unusual beast. We are a co-regulatory organisation that is a packaging sustainability initiative. So we're a hybrid. We work with government, with all states in Australia. We're in partnership with them, but we are also an industry-led organisation with an environmental remit. So sometimes we get ourselves a little bit confused of which hat, but we are quite an ambitious plan. The covenant it's an unusual named word to have in your name, and it does bring up all sorts of ideas. It really just means that it is an agreement. We have signed with 8 jurisdictions in Australia to deliver on environmental outcomes regarding packaging. We've got obligations under the covenant, as do the jurisdictions. A little bit about Australia. 24 million people, yet we're the 6th largest nation. That, we've got a lot of space and not many people. We're the largest island, the smallest and flattest continent. We also are part of Asia Pacific, and that's important to remember, because while we are a highly developed country in many respects, we also are, in our backyard is a great deal of ocean pollution. The APC has 1,000 members. Major companies ranging from your multinationals through to Australian organisations with packaging. We've been going for 15 years. We're now in our 4th iteration, and this is quite an exciting time for us, and I'll very briefly go through what it is that we do. There are 3 core pillars, each of which have 2 strategies under them. This was all approved if you want to have a fun day, try and negotiate with 8 jurisdictions to get a strategic plan endorsed by every minister. We did it in January. One of our strategies is, of course, sustainable design. It's all about making sure at the early part, people are thinking about end of life as well as the whole of life. Circular economies, and I'll come back to this in a moment. Consumer labelling. There's a scheme in the US, there's a scheme in France, there's one in the UK. We see it as vital to be able to guide consumer behaviour and get the packaging in the right bin. Less waste to landfill, of course that's the aim. Tackling takeaway meal containers. This is one of Australia's major contributors to plastics in ocean. and of course being a knowledge centre. That's why we exist. So that was a very quick tour of our strategic plan. Now I want to get back to what I'm actually meant to be talking about, which is circular economies and the Australian experience. The ideal picture is, of course, that we get to reharvest and reharvest and reharvest, and we're pretty good at it with glass. We've got good infrastructure, we've got good recycling rates and good processing rates for that colour. But when it comes to plastics, and in particular soft plastics, the flexible type, as we've all heard today, there are issues. The reality for us isn't pretty. In Australia each year we have 2,000 tonnes of plastic sent to landfill and 300 tonne recycled. We also have 20 tonne going to energy recovery. So our recovery rate's 14%. Okay, so we're pretty much on average with the rest of the world, that sounds like. But of that 300 tonne, 200 tonne gets exported. Exporting it is our major source of recycling. So we see that as a major problem. You can't say that you have a circular economy if it's just about offshoring. Interestingly, Doug, 62% of our plastic goes to Hong Kong, so followed by Indonesia and Thailand. Now, 3 countries that are in the top 5 for plastic getting into the ocean. Fortunately, there is momentum to make change, and in Australia we recently had a think tank where we had 100 academics and experts and industry practitioners all in the one room. A government were a party to it, and we talked through what the challenges are. What is it that is stopping us having truly circular economies? We focused on soft plastics, primarily because that is the one that we see has the least value and least recyclability. So this is what we found. There are market failures. Market failures that are devaluing the soft plastic. Firstly, it's the lack of end markets. Now, we heard earlier today that there are markets wanting the plastics. Problem then is, do we have the infrastructure to collect it? So, we need to know where those end markets are, and that we have a stock to go through, but we also have to have the infrastructure, and in Australia we've got to have the logistics sorted out because there are vast spaces between towns. Then you have the issue of pricing. What is the price point at which recovered soft plastics is actually viable to use compared to virgin and compared to landfill costs? And we've got consumer communication to think about as well, because it's not really clearly conveyed. Consumers don't see necessarily the science behind what it is that, green claims are made, and consumers get concerned about what actually does it all mean. It's very confusing, and if they know that a piece of plastic wrapped around a cucumber actually does extend its life, then they're prepared to buy that cucumber. Without that message, it's seen, and this has been proven with research, it's seen as such a waste of packaging. Second one is poor disposal due to lack of consumer awareness. We get high contamination rates, and that's critical or not having the contamination rates is critical in getting good feedstock. We have made it very hard. Consumers are struggling to identify which bin to put their packaging in. Research in Australia shows that the plastic identification codes are actually confused as recycling codes. Consumers do think that if it's got a number on it, it means it's recyclable. They don't understand the 1 to 7. It doesn't translate. Then you've got claims about recyclability. Lots of companies are looking to put their own mark on, yet the recyclability may be based on theoretical recyclability. You know, technically, this material is recyclable in Europe. If we don't have the facilities in Australia, then it's not recyclable. Recycled content is also confusing consumers because seeing the word recycled, it's given a quick glance, and then that material can end up in the recycling stream. There's major confusion between compostable and biodegradable. Compostable is seen as, okay, I can throw that in my home composting. In Australia, we don't have many industrial composting facilities, so that word is actually causing more contamination. Biodegradable is being seen as a licence in some respects to actually place the item into the environment. It's biodegradable, it must disappear, therefore it's good. So I can have biodegradable and just leave it behind in the park. Then there's items that aren't labelled. And so across the board, we have not made it easy for consumers to help us get clean feedstock. That brings me to the fact that there's this perception in Australia that recovered soft plastic materials are low in quality, they're costly to get, and there's insufficient supply. Therefore, that leads to limited uptake. It's actually not, it's not true. We can collect. I know that this isn't unique to Australia, but we do have in-store drop-off. It can be collected and it can be reused. What we need is agreements in the supply chain and good reverse logistics. We need to be designing, and this is where the sustainable design comes in, we need to be designing for recovery with recycle-ready packaging. That needs to be thought about up front. And we need financial solutions because every time you have a facilities upgrade, they're not cheap. And organisations, companies running them, are trying to get the maximum value out of the technology that they've put in place. Then that brings us to the other issue, which for the recycling facilities, which is that they are commercial and competitive. They do not want to share their technology and operational information. So as a result, it's not incredibly clear what gets recycled, where it ends up. So for us, we're quite passionate to find out, yes, it's gone through a recycler, but did it actually get reused? And then the fourth one is curbside pickup. The retail, we do have a good supply coming through the retail outlets, but they are the committed people, and that is not growing. The feed through our retailers isn't growing. It's not available at every retailer. You have to go in-store, which means you've got to make a little bit extra effort. You've got to park and get out, and it decreases the number of people that will actually do it. We've had a successful pilot in 4 councils in Australia of collecting soft plastics at curbside. Incredibly simple. They basically use the soft plastic bag to put all the soft plastics in, tie it up, put it in the recycling bin, and then when that gets to the facility, it's pulled out by hand. They're getting good quality, low contamination rates. The issue will be how readily can that be applied across the commercial operators who have different market needs. they're actually getting 75% recovery from that source. I just really want to hone in the fact that it is very, very sparse. There are massive distances. So the logistics is one of the issues that makes everything a little bit harder for us. But it's not an excuse, it's just something we have to deal with. I mentioned that we're a framework. We're here to help bring everybody together. So, we actually can't let those challenges stop us. Those challenges are there to be overcome. So we're going to continue through our collaboration to make sure that we can overcome these challenges. I mentioned that we have done a think tank earlier in the year, and that produced a white paper which highlights our 4 key areas, and then that is the start for where we're taking it next. The things that the APC can do directly on overcoming the challenges are real, and we are starting them. So end markets, we are collaborating with industry to find ways to preferably side or upcycle plastic. In Australia, we've got a great source of the soft plastics going into benches and speed humps, and that is a valid option, but it is not necessarily the way that we're going to be able to use all of the plastic that we have. So definitely end markets for us, and making sure that we can deliver feedstock is a priority. Designing for disposal is another priority. We have a sustainable packaging guidelines on which every member has to report how they are tracking. We will be increasing the reporting requirements in the coming year, including the amount of renewable content and the amount of recycled content able to be used by sector. So we're really pushing back onto the design phase to think about end of life. Labelling, we've got that. Oh, sorry, I should also mention that for the design, we're in the process of pulling together a tool that will be available to our members specifically so that they can understand the likelihood of recyclability for their packaging based on Australian recycling. So it's all well and good to be able to do life cycle assessments or to know that material is usually recycled. For us, it's a case of, well, is it going to, will 75% or 80% of curbside recycling or industrial recycling mean that it will actually get to a recycler? So that tool will be critical in helping assess. Collection is also important. We are quite passionate to see how the soft plastics in curbside may roll out. Anything that we can do to enable and empower the consumer and to inform businesses on how to better collect and dispose will give us better clean streams. Then the last one there is collaboration, and we have started three working groups. I should say that as part of the covenant and the agreement that we have with government, we had to make some pretty big, ambitious goals. One of which is that we will have identified viable circular economies for 50% of current problem materials. That's a pretty big ask. We've done it because we have to be ambitious. We have to aim high. We don't know how we're going to do it all, but we have started with three problem materials: expanded polystyrene, coffee cups, and of course soft plastics. So with that, we've set up working groups, and each working group is a mix of people who aren't allowed to bring their vested interest of their company hat into the room. That's how they get onto the working group. It's like, you know, and you're going to be called on it. If you're in that room and you start beating your own drum, you're going to be called on it. Also, to support our thinking and take us that next step, we've set up a technical reference group. And the technical reference group, very much like the working groups, is peer-based knowledge, bringing thoughts together and being able to give us an independent, unbiased temperature test on all the activities we do. So all the projects, all the programs of work, the technical reference group is critical. So through collaboration, we're going to bring the Australian industry further advanced. We were doing really well in the 90s. We took the foot off the pedal, and we need to regain that momentum. So that's next. So they are the 4 things that we're doing directly. There will be more work that comes from each of the working groups, and there will be a lot of information that we need to gather from our members and to be able to provide. So I look forward to future plasticities being able to give you more around how we have actually addressed some of these and the rates of variation. One of the other targets we've perhaps foolishly said is that we will reduce the amount of packaging that goes to landfill, and we have given commitments about that with the labelling as well. So that ends my little presentation. It really was that I want to take you through the challenges that we're seeing to creating circular economies. It isn't easy, and it's not circular. We need to get it to that point where it can be robust and overcome any of these little glitches that seem to appear as market failures.
Thank you very much, Trish.
Thank you.
Does anyone have a quick question for Trish in Australia? Matt?
Thanks, Trish. Great presentation.
Thank you.
So I heard that you mentioned putting flexibles into your curbside, flexible packaging into your curbside programs, and I just was curious about, have you started doing that? What are you finding out from that experience? And where are the markets for those materials? Thanks.
Thank you. It's in a pilot, so it's been trialled in 4 councils, and with success. So in those 4 councils, households were given, it's quite cute really, they were given plastic bags with the instructions of what soft plastics to put in and what not to, so that they had clarity. They had 5 bags to start with, and 75% recovery rate, but about 2/3 of houses actually participated during the trial and did collect their soft plastics. When they ran out of the 5 bags that they were given, there'd been enough education so that they could continue the practice with other, just regular soft plastic bags. The recyclers, the 4 councils all went into one recycling facility, which made it a lot easier because they bought into the pilot and they were prepared to have the hands-on removal. The plastic was selling at good rates from what I understand. I think, and don't quote me on this, but about $200 a bale. So, yeah. So they were pretty pleased with that. And then, of course, where the end markets come in, though, is still the side or downcycling where we're creating building products or the like from soft plastics.
Okay, thank you very much, Trish. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry? I'm sorry.
Sorry, Trish. So my question was, they're actually going into the recycling markets and not going into fuel markets. Is that right?
Yes, recycling markets. Yes. So yeah.
Okay.
Although I have some colleagues here, I think, who would like to get their hands on them.
Thanks, Trish. We appreciate it.
Thank you.